Happy Sunday, everyone. It is officially National Championship Day for the South Carolina women's basketball team. Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Veltri here for GC Live Sunday Reset. Welcome in, as always, and I've got a special guest joining me live from Tampa, Florida. We're doing this whole show remote today. I'm out in Starkville, Mississippi, and Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game is out in Tampa, Florida, getting ready to cover a potential back-to-back national championship victory for the South Carolina Gamecocks. But as always, Elijah, how you doing, man?
I'm fantastic. It is a wonderful day out here in Tampa, and Starkville, Mississippi, fine town, but I think I might have the edge in terms of scenic locale today.
Yeah, no, you definitely do. The weather out here it's awful. Had to deal with during the final four yesterday for the men. Couldn't watch the game for the most part because you have the weather updates going on out here, the potential tornado. So it hasn't been good weather out here outside of yesterday, but we'll see what happens today. But anyway, Elijah,
you survived Starkville yesterday. Yes. That's what it sounds like. You survived
yesterday, survived overnight. It's still raining out here today, and I got a baseball game a little over 2 hours here, so we'll see if they play on time. But we know basketball is going to be on time today. 3 p.m. tip, South Carolina, UConn, rematch of the 2022 National Championship, but also a rematch of an earlier meeting this year where South Carolina got their butt kicked by the Huskies at CLA. I think butt kicking is an understatement because that game that was an embarrassment for the Gamecocks. But a lot's changed since then, I would say. I'm sure you can agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
But first, we got to talk about how they got here to this point. They beat Texas in the Final Four the other night, and UConn beat the you-know-what out of UCLA. Did that surprise you at all, how bad
oh my God.
that game went?
Oh, that game was not FCC compliant, I'm afraid. That was, I'm sitting there, man, after all the locker room availability and all the interviews and stuff after the game, like the regular post-game work, and I'm sitting up at my seat and I'm just like in awe of what I am watching. Like almost can't believe what I am watching with my own eyes of UCLA just getting eviscerated right on a national stage. They had absolutely nothing for UConn, man. Nothing. I think that's how I should expect to feel watching the biggest blowout in the history of the Final Four. But I love that UCLA team, man. I thought Lauren Betts was one of the best players in the country all year long. I thought that, their guard play was good enough to really supplement that. And that turned out to just straight up not be the case. It just didn't bleeping matter when it got down to the floor. And UConn said, hey, we got three of the best players in the country. You don't. And they whooped them, man. That was an absolute surprise. The Texas-South Carolina game, not so much. That was not so much a surprise to me just because of how good this Carolina team is. They're just straight up better than Texas. I know Texas beat them in Austin, but I still consider that matchup what I like to call a Mars matchup, where I would pick South Carolina to beat Texas. They played at home. If they played on the road at a neutral site, or if they're even on Mars, I'm picking South Carolina to win that game. That's a Mars matchup for me from a basketball standpoint. But an incredible Friday night from South Carolina too. Really, you found out. The team itself found out the offense. They found it again after we were talking about, like, where is it in the Maryland and Duke games, and then you turn around and they get some really good shots early in the shot clock. They're able to figure it out after a slow first 5 minutes. They unlocked themselves a little bit offensively, and you're going to need every bit of that today if you want to win this game against UConn.
Now, South Carolina beat Texas the other day for the third time this year in 4 matchups, 74-57.
4 if you count the coin toss.
I was about to say, coin toss, me personally, I count the coin toss because it's like
I'm counting it. I'll count it.
It was fair game, right?
Yep.
No bias in there, just flipping a coin in the air. Greg Sankey lands on South Carolina. That was that. So yes, 4 out of 5 times this year when they faced off in women's basketball, 1 technical.
We'll let it count.
South Carolina has dominated the series, but going back to that game on Friday before we flip over to the national championship, what, in your opinion, you being there and stuff, you obviously covering this as close as you do, what was the difference, the turning point in that game, in your opinion?
I think it's two things. One, kind of what I alluded to earlier with the offense kind of figuring itself out, and Dawn really in real time diagnosing the mismatch they had. I think Dawn kind of realized maybe about halfway through that second quarter that when Chloe or Joyce or even Sanaya were playing away from the basket, that Texas was applying a lot of ball pressure with their bigs. With Texas, it's probably not the best idea because as good as Taylor Jones and Kyla Oldacre are, they are not great laterally. And South Carolina's bigs do have an advantage of being able to put the ball on the floor. And you saw on that last play, or the last bucket that South Carolina had at the end of the first half, where Joyce kind of has the ball about 30 feet or so from the rim. And Kyla Oldacre isn't just guarding her. She's applying ball pressure from about 30 feet. And Joyce kind of looks over at Dawn, and Dawn's just saying, go, like, take her. And Joyce eviscerated that poor girl off the bounce, got to the basket, they score, and then they kind of figure out the offense in that way. And they were scoring well over 1.1 points per possession on Friday, which is a massive improvement considering they didn't break 0.9 against Maryland or Duke. So that was a big turning point. You could kind of see in real time that they figured it out. Another thing was Madison Booker picking up that third foul late in the first half. And it was a dumb foul too. Like, I understand maybe trying to get a steal, maybe trying to spark your team because Texas was starting to continue to hang around. But when she made that foul, and that gave her 3 with just a couple minutes, I guess, left in the first half, Vic Schaefer had no choice but to sit her because you can't pick up a fourth before halftime, right? And Madison Booker is so much of that Texas offense. Like that was really the Longhorns' biggest flaw to me, was that they kind of lived and died by Madison Booker scoring a lot of points or their bigs getting offensive rebounds. They're not a good shooting team. Now, Jordan Lee almost shot them back in the game at one point, but without Madison Booker being on the floor, without Texas having really a counterpunch to what South Carolina was doing to them, that really felt like, okay, this is going to get pretty comfortable once we get down the stretch. And really, when Madison Booker even came in the second half, she was kind of iced out a little bit. When you sit on the bench for that long, you kind of ice yourself, in terms of not getting in a rhythm. And you saw, like, she had a couple shots in the second half, but it wasn't enough to be able to mount a comeback. Once South Carolina hit a couple threes, once you got Tahina Pow a few good looks, once you got Tessa Johnson a few good looks, and those shots were able to go in, Texas just didn't have that offensive firepower to be able to crawl out of any type of deficit. So to me, really, it's just the combination of South Carolina figuring it out on the offensive side of the floor and Madison Booker basically taking herself out of the game late in that first half.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those names there. Tahina Pow going 3 of 4 from the 3. South Carolina went 7 of 11 from three-point range in this game, 29 for 57 from the field. And I think, you mentioned it, the big difference with Madison Booker getting those 3 fouls. That's a huge loss there for Texas. And there was a stretch. Again, I'm at baseball when this is all going on, but keeping up with the game on Twitter and stuff. I think Alan Cole from Gamecock Scoop had tweeted it out that she was off the floor for about like 8.5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And South Carolina didn't really I think they maybe had like a few possession lead by that point. Like, they didn't dominate that stretch like they probably should have, but it didn't matter because they still dominated this game in the second half and won, in convincing fashion. And you look at that third quarter, outscoring Texas 20-9. I mean, from your standpoint, when did you kind of feel like the game was like, all right, this game's in hand? Like, they're going to be moving on to the national championship.
I think the first time I really felt that, it might have been when Jordan Lee hits a 3, and I'm like, okay, well, now Texas maybe has a chance to shoot themselves back into this game. And I go back to my notes here. I want to say it was Tessa that hit the 3 after that. Yeah, and Bree got a block on Booker, forced a turnover, and then Tessa hits a 3, and that was when I was like, this thing is over. Or just no, Pow. Sorry, yeah, Tahina Pow. I saw that up, in my notes because I noted it. I was like, Jordan Lee might shoot themselves back into the game, and then the next line, LOL, just kidding. Tahina Pow matches it with a 3. And if South Carolina is shooting that well from beyond the arc, there's really not a team that can beat them. I know UConn has been phenomenal. It's been on another planet in terms of production since the month of February, but dude, you get South Carolina shooting threes like that. That's what made them so dangerous last year. They haven't shot the ball as well in totality of this year. But once Tahina hit that shot and then Tessa hit that one a little later, you just knew there was no way Texas was going to be able to mount any type of comeback. They just don't have the offensive horses to run that race.
No, definitely not. And this is why, I mean, look, I remember when Kim Mulkey, LSU's head coach, was talking about how South Carolina's got All-Americans all over the floor. It's hard to keep up with that. And I think that's what we do see when this team is out there. They're just very good up and down. And the team they're facing today is also very good, top to bottom. UConn is back in the title game, looking for their first championship in, I believe, 9 years. So it's crazy how much UConn has won in their program history and stuff. But like lately, I mean, they've been to the national championships, been to the Final Fours, but they haven't been able to get it done recently. It does feel like today is probably their best chance. And we got a comment here, from a South Carolina fan who feels UConn's going to win this game. They demolished UCLA, as we mentioned at the beginning. And so they believe that South Carolina can't keep up with the pace of UConn. To that, what do you have to say about that?
I agree with the comment of the importance of keeping up with the pace. I think my one pushback is that South Carolina can. They didn't when they played last time, and that's why UConn beat them like a drum, right? It was because for the first time in my life watching an established Don Staley coached South Carolina basketball team, that's the first time I've ever seen them just get worn out in transition. I can't really recall another time where they got beat because they just couldn't get back on defense. I don't think they understood, especially with some of the conversations I may have had with some of the players, here this weekend. I don't know if they understood exactly how fast UConn plays. It's one thing to watch it on film. It's another thing to be out on the floor and keep up. And I think they just got punched in the mouth early. And then South Carolina shot 3 for 17 from 3 in that game too. So they couldn't shoot themselves back in it, which is something this team has the capability of doing. They just didn't do it that game. And I felt all season long that if these teams met again, South Carolina wins. I felt less confident about that after watching what they did to UCLA, right? I mean, UConn's the best team in women's college basketball right now, but we get in a one-off situation. Defense is paramount, right? And not just defense, transition defense. And UCLA's transition defense was poor. And UConn just completely picked them apart out in the open floor. I think Paige Becker's made one play in that game where she's UConn gets an offensive rebound. She runs down the floor, outruns Kiki Rice and a couple other of UCLA's guards. Long outlet pass is made. Paige jumps in the air, catches it. And as soon as that ball touches her fingertips, it was deflected to somebody else. And I think it was Sarah Strong or AZ Fudd end up catching it and shooting a layup after that. And it was one of those plays where you're like, that girl knew exactly what she was doing with that ball while it was in the air. And that's what maybe separates UConn in the fast break. I mean, this is the best transition team in the sport right now. And they really prove that with just how natural it looks when you watch them. And against South Carolina, it wasn't just getting back in transition, shooting layups. They were hunting transition threes. And that's how they were able to hit 13 of those. And when one team hits 13 threes, the other team only hits 3. It becomes a numbers game. And you just get completely outclassed from the 3-point line. And it's not because UConn was just getting open shots in the half court. They got a lot of those in transition. And a lot of the dagger threes the Huskies made in that game came in transition. And if you're not able to be on your P's and Q's and be able to get back and establish some type of resistance to the rim, that's when UConn can really be dangerous. But I think that's a lesson this team learned in that game, is that it's one thing to see them on film and do that to like St. John's or Creighton when they win by 50. It's another thing to actually be on the floor and have to stop them from doing it. And I think if South Carolina is able to get back in transition today and really slow down the pace of this game and make it a half-court style game, they will win that battle just because this is the best half-court defense in America with South Carolina.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, I think, the other day on 107.5 The Game when Tyler and I were talking to you in that 9:30 segment. You mentioned that UConn really like 20-plus points better than South Carolina today? Probably not, right? But do you feel like that is the key, like stopping them in transition, slowing the pace of the game down? Do you feel like that's the key to making a change today and winning this game?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Jack. I think that's going to be really one of the biggest things. It's either slowing them down in transition and then also creating your transition opportunities. That's one of the reasons why you get a 29-point deficit, is because one team's getting the transition opportunities and getting clean, easy, open looks, and you're not. Like they won the shot quality battle by a mile during that game. And that's why it's, for me today, Mylasia Fulwiley is so important, because she can get out in the open floor. She can make stuff happen when the game gets a little hectic. And that has to be your counterpunch. That has to be kind of your response to winning the transition game, right? But really though, like the strength of this Carolina team, when it's close games or even a lot of the games that they've blown out their opponents this year, it's because they smother their opponents on the defensive side of the ball. Like Bree Hall is arguably the best on-ball defender in the country. Raven Johnson's up there too. Tahina Paopao has grown immensely when it comes to just being able to guard the ball and create some resistance between, ball handler and rim. And what this team does too, even if they do get beat off of that dribble, that they're one of the better help defensive teams in the country, because Sanaya Fagan has a lot of length. She's not 6'7". She's not like Camilla's size, but she can cover a lot of ground, and she's got really long arms, and she's able to block shots near the rim, or she's able to alter what UConn would want to do. And now remember, in that game back in February, UConn was 18 for 43 on 2-point shots. A lot of those were in the half court. When they got it into a half court game, it became more manageable. But whenever you lose contain on UConn's guards and Paige Beckers, and you allow them to get open three-point looks, especially in that corner, they're going to knock them down. So I think, Jack, one of the biggest things in this game is just making sure that you can kind of pull UConn, instead of playing a game in the 80s and 70s, if you can get this bad boy into the high 50s, low 60s, even the mid 60s, I like your chances of winning, just because also UConn hadn't played a close game in it's been 2 months now, because today is April 6th. Their last loss was to Tennessee on February 6th. And that was the last time, Jack, this team has played a game that wasn't decided by at least 14 points.
It's insane. They're such a high scoring team, number one. And that is ultimately, I think, what worries me about today, is that it's not that South Carolina can't slow this team down, but what if you get into a little bit of a street fight here, and it's just you're going shot. You can't. I don't know if you can go shot for shot with this team. Heck, I don't know if anyone can.
Hard, yeah.
Now, the key today, I feel like, and we've heard so much about her this week, and obviously the national media, Paige Beckers, right? She's a star. She's UConn's best player, hands down. And I think of it a little bit like, hearing so much about Caitlin Clark last year from Iowa when South Carolina faced the Hawkeyes in the national championship game last year. But as we've heard, from Dawn Staley herself, talking about how Winston Gandy was a huge part of the game plan to slowing down Caitlin, and that's ultimately what they attribute the success of winning that championship game to. Do you feel like they're going to come out with sort of obviously Caitlin and Paige are not exactly the same type of player. Caitlin's 101 in my opinion, but do you think they come out with some sort of similar plan as to how they want to go out and try to stop her, make her a focal point of the plan of how to win this game today by slowing her down?
Definitely. And I think the one similarity that we'll see today that we saw this time last year when they met Iowa in the championship game was you're going to see a lot of different players guarding Paige Beckers, I believe. I think you'll see Raven and Bree and Tessa and Mylasia all have their shot at guarding Paige Beckers one-on-one, because one of the reasons that was such a big deal last year against Caitlin Clark is usually in a game, if it's one primary defender guarding one primary ball or scorer and ball handler, both players can get equally worn out throughout the game. But when you're throwing fresh legs and just waves at a star player like that player has to handle about 4 different people throughout the course of the game, and you're playing 38 minutes, and let's say Raven's playing 25, Breezy's playing 27, 28, Tessa's playing another 15 to 20, Mylasia's maybe getting 25 minutes, they're going to be fresher in crunch time, which is another reason why this thing if you're South Carolina, you just get this to be a 1-possession game or a 1 to 5 point game with about 6 minutes left. I like their chances because there's a better ability to withstand the entire 40-minute game that South Carolina has as opposed to UConn. And as great as UConn is top to bottom, they maybe just don't have the numbers depth, right, that South Carolina has. UConn's got a really good bench, and that's one of the reasons why they've been able to elevate themselves this year to be better than they were last year, because they've been healthy all year, and their bench has improved. The play from a lot of their reserves has improved significantly. But that's the one ultimate, I guess, trump card this team has in the Gamecocks, is that they are able to go 5 deep off their bench, and they're able to manage minutes. Don is one of the best minutes managers the game has ever seen. I think that part is going to be really similar. Some of the very, I guess, fine details will be a little different, because South Carolina did specifically, they wanted Caitlin Clark to continue going with her right hand. Caitlin Clark does an amazing left hand step back where she basically jumps to the left side of her body. That's where she gets a lot of her rhythm threes off of the dribble, right? We talk about rhythm threes. A lot of that just means catching it at the right spot in the shooter's pocket and being able to catch and shoot without having to make any type of extra movement that might throw off the mechanics of your shot. But what Caitlin Clark did really well was when she gets to her right hand and she can cross over that left and then hit that step back, she's as much rhythm there as she is off the catch. And what South Carolina did was want to take that move away from her and force her to continue going right, maybe a little closer towards the baseline. So that might be a little different, because Paige Beckers does have what I would consider to be maybe a little bit of a better handle than what Caitlin Clark does. And obviously not the same range, not the same, prowess as a jump shooter. So what we see with her might be a little different. I don't know if they will switch ball screens. How they guard ball screens is going to be the fascinating thing too, because Paige Beckers is a lot more of a maestro in the pick and roll when it comes to getting her downhill and getting extra options, whether it be corner threes or the screener who's coming out, getting to the basket. She's really good at facilitating that. Do you blitz that ball screen? Do you ice it? That's the one thing that I'm really looking for in this game, is to see how they decide to apply coverage to what Paige Beckers does in a pick and roll.
Here's a good point here from Adam, and it's right. South Carolina can't really afford to start out slow. But I'll ask you a hypothetical in this case, because we saw it last year against Iowa, where Iowa just got off to a great start in that game. South Carolina kind of had to fight their way back into it, and we've kind of seen that a little bit so far this postseason, to where, and especially before the Texas game, the most recent one, that is 2 days ago, there have been a lot of close games for the Gamecocks in the postseason here. And they've had to really, like the Duke game, for instance, they had to fight back in the fourth quarter to take the lead and win that game. If they do hypothetically start slower today and they find themselves maybe, let's say, down at halftime, but 8 points maybe. I don't know, just guessing here. I don't have the script. I don't know what's going to happen. But let's say they are down at halftime. What is it that South Carolina can do to get back in a game if they are down at any point? Is it, do they have the offensive firepower? I know we mentioned earlier, I don't think anyone can really keep up with UConn when they're scoring at will. But what do they have that's going to help them win this game and separate themselves?
Despite maybe the down shooting year that Tahina's had, because I think she's around 36% from three this year, as opposed to north of 40 last year, you still have an elite 3-point shooter. I still, on any given day, trust Tahina Pow to go out there and hit a shot if she's in a tight spot. Same thing with Tessa Johnson too. I think one of the best signs that Gamecock fans got from Friday was Tessa hitting 3 jumpers. 2 of them were off, curl screens or little small staggers near the free throw line, but she caught him, knocked him down. And then when she got the ball on the wing, not too long after that, drilled a 3-pointer. You need that version of Tessa Johnson to be able to win this game, because if you get down 8 or so, in this hypothetical, say you're down 8 and UConn is shooting the ball really well, you're not going to get back into the game by running 25 seconds off the shot clock or 30 to 35 seconds off the shot clock and pounding the paint. You're just not. UCLA learned that the hard way, right? UCLA had no other offense outside of Lauren Betts. And yeah, it's great that Lauren Betts got 25 points. And yeah, it was great that she scored near the basket a lot. But when you're down 20, that's not going to get you back in the game, especially if you're having a hard time getting stops. You're going to have to defend the three-point line really well, and you're going to have to make some three-point shots in your own, because then it just becomes a numbers game, and you got to be able to slowly creep your way back up. And if you're going to give up buckets on one end, you got to make sure you're just scoring more points more efficiently on your side of the floor. So if they're scoring twos, you're going to have to hit a three, right? Because then you get a +1 in the possession advantage going on. So my big thing is, they get down at half and they're losing by multiple possessions in the second half. You got to start running some actions to get Tahina Pau open, or Tessa Johnson open, or even Bree Hall. Bree Hall's shooting like 70-something% in this NCAA tournament from three, right? Like, she's been seemingly automatic. Now, a lot of that comes in transition, and it comes within the flow of the offense, which means it's not normally forced. But if you do get down several possessions in the second half of this game, or even in the fourth quarter, if it's like an 8-point game in the fourth quarter, then not saying you panic shoot, but you start running some offense to get yourself some of those looks, to give yourself a chance to be able to chip away at a deficit. And that's really the best way to do it against a team in UConn that can go on a 10-0 run like that, right? Like they have that elite, it's not a word, you probably can't find this in the Webster's dictionary, but spurt ability. They have that elite talent and trait to be able to make a tight game a not tight game, just because UConn has a ceiling offensively that's just really hard to obtain.
Real quick before we get into final thoughts and predictions and all that on this game, got a question here from Craig. It's an interesting one, and it has a little bit more just to do with the bigger picture of this game and stuff. But he asks, what did y'all think about Dawn's answer to the Beckers needing to win a national championship to validate her? And there's been so much talk, as I mentioned before, about Paige and, her chance to win a national championship here. And I feel like there hasn't been enough talk, as Dawn kind of alluded to yesterday, not enough, coverage for South Carolina in a way. I know there's been a lot of drama surrounding that and stuff. And I think they should all have the same equal coverage, right? It shouldn't be one better than the other. It's just,
we can do both, because we can do both.
Do both. But, it doesn't fit the agendas sometimes, right? So the question is, does Paige Beckers need to win a championship to validate her? And I guess on the flip side of that, I mean, from a South Carolina standpoint, winning another national championship here, I mean, it's they've done it already a few times here, 3 times, but to go back to back, I mean, how impressive would that be? So the Paige part of that first, and then diving into the back-to-back potential here.
With the Paige thing, I think the comment maybe wasn't as much saying that she needed the championship to validate her specifically. That wasn't at least what I gathered from listening to it. But it is needed for Paige if she wants to be, thought of as an all-time great UConn Husky. You got to win a championship. Like, they've won 11. They've won 11 titles. She would be easily the greatest player at UConn to not win a championship. Like that is what that program is. You can go and have Paige Beckers' career at any other program. You can even have it at Tennessee, which along with UConn is the only women's college basketball program in America that has won more than 3 national titles. So in that respect, she needs it in order to be considered one of the best in the history of that program. Because when that program has Maya Moore, when they have Breanna Stewart, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, it's almost like playing with the Los Angeles Lakers, right? Where you've won, or the Boston Celtics, where it's like, yeah, you may have a great career. Like, before Paul Pierce won his title, it's like, yeah, you've had a great career. You're breaking franchise numbers, but Larry Bird won a lot of titles. Kevin McHale won titles. Bill Russell won titles. You then aren't put in that same, breath. Jason Tatum the same way. It's kind of like that. Like, when you play for UConn, you have to, in order to be considered one of the best, you have to add to that trophy room. So I think that's kind of where the pressure for Paige lies, is you have to be able to cement yourself by winning a title, because that's the standard there. And for South Carolina too, in terms of the opportunity they have today to go back to back, it's great because you've not done it. This would be another thing that you put on, Dawn's resume. She's already won 3 titles. She has an undefeated season underneath her belt. but she hasn't gone back to back. It's so hard to repeat. And like Tennessee's gone back to back, UConn's gone back to back, Southern Cal in the, I believe the 80s went back to back when Cheryl Miller was there. It's something that only very few teams in the sport have done. But most importantly, that stat I alluded to earlier, Tennessee and UConn, the two best programs in the history of the sport. They're the only two programs in the history of the sport to win more than 3 national titles. That changes today if you win. So if you win today, we can now say that only 3 schools in the history of the sport have won more than 3. You would have done that and reached that mountaintop in a 10-year stretch. By the time you made your first Final Four in 2015 to this one here in 2025, also in Tampa, ironically enough, you will have won 4 championships in a span of 10 years. And that put that firmly, and not just firmly, permanently puts you in that same conversation with UConn and Tennessee. Sometimes, even if you're late to the party, you're still at the party and you're there for a while and you're still having fun. You can get to that party maybe a little later than everybody else, but if you get to that party, you are still there with the 2 best names, the pioneer programs of this sport, and not just the gold standard, but those who have been there and have been winning titles for longer than you and I have been on this earth. So that is a pretty special thing to be able to, in a 10-year stretch for making your first Final Four, getting yourself into that level historically is beyond significant.
And they're doing it in a different era too, right? You got NIL going on now, the transfer portal. Things happen. Like South Carolina, for the most part, I feel like has been able to retain the bulk of their roster year after year, and you're going to lose a few players here and there. That happens, right?
Yeah.
You're going to gain some players, right? You have a few new players in the squad this year, but for the most part, the heart and soul of this team is those players that have been here since the days of Aaliyah Boston and the freshies, right? Like they've been here the whole time, and a lot of these players have a chance to win a 3rd national championship today, which would be very impressive. And I feel like we've teased it enough. Let's get into some predictions here, man. You've been out there in Tampa since when did you get out there?
I got here Thursday around noon.
Okay, cool. So, first off, just tell everyone about the experience out there. What's it been like? And then, let's not keep it waiting any longer. How is this game going to go? What's going to be the difference for South Carolina? And yeah, let me hear it, man.
Yeah, in terms of the Final Four experience, man, it's the coolest thing I've ever gotten to cover. And if you are a fan and you grow a wild hair and you're like, you know what, I want to go to a Final Four one day, highly recommend it because the atmosphere is awesome. They do so much like stuff around the arena. There's a lot of stuff for fans to do, for kids to do. And that Friday night is one of the best nights in sports where you have the 4 heavyweights, 2 straight games, and they usually almost always deliver. It's an amazing experience. So I highly recommend anybody that's ever thought about attending a Final Four in person, if you can do it, do it. I definitely recommend it. And when it comes down to predicting this game and analyzing it, my basketball eyes and my brain tell me UConn should win this game. I have a gut feeling they don't because of what South Carolina brings defensively. And if they can get it into the half court, I like their chances more often than not. And here's another thing. I'll recycle another stat I threw at you earlier. UConn hasn't played a close game, a game that was decided in the last couple minutes since February 6th. Today is April 6th. That's 2 months. And this Carolina team has had plenty of those games. This unit that you mentioned, that the senior class of Sanaya Fagan, Raven Johnson, Bree Hall, they're playing in their 3rd national championship game. This ain't their first rodeo. This is nothing they're not accustomed to do. Yeah, I understand Paige Beckers has played in a national title game at UConn, losing to South Carolina, but she hadn't won it. This is a group that has at least players with at least 2 championships underneath their belt. They know what it takes in this game, in this short turnaround, in this setting, this environment, to win a basketball game. And when it comes down to like what players I trust more, I trust the players that have been here before and that know what it takes to win, that have that secret winning sauce to them. And this program has it. Not to say UConn doesn't, because you don't win 11 national championships by accident, but the players that are playing on the floor, coaches are great, and preparation is so much of what wins these games. But Don and Gino can't go up there and play one-on-one for a title. They can't make the decisions on the floor. which is why if we get to a close game here in the last 3 minutes and it's about a 1-score game, yeah, I trust the ball in Tahina Paopau's hands. I trust the ball in Raven Johnson's hands to be able to make the right basketball play. I trust Chloe Kitts, who has this year discovered her superpower of turning into closing time Chloe and taking over a game. I trust them to do that when the margins get really tight. And that's why I'd pick South Carolina to win this game by 1. And it's going to be a thriller.
By 1.
By 1.
Wow. That's
winning it on a defensive stop, too. How about that? I'll go a little further. They win it on a defensive stop.
That's impressive. I'm going to be super disappointed, though, if this game is anywhere near what it was a few months ago. Like, I really do hope this is a great game. And I think it will be. I think it's going to be a really good game and live up to the hype of what a national championship should be. So, Elijah, I've taken up enough of your time, man. I know you got to get going here to the arena. And, it should be a great time for you today. Looking forward to seeing all your coverage. And be sure to follow along on 107.5 The Game with Elijah Campbell. What is it? E_Campbell3 on Twitter, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, E_Campbell3, and then our station account at 107.5 The Game, where we'll get all the locker room availability interviews afterwards and all the reaction you could possibly handle. You drink it through a fire hose of information. That's our goal here.
Jeez, got some yelling going on outside.
You do. There is a dispute going on. There is something going on out here, man. It was like this last night too, so I'm ready to get out of here soon. But Elijah, man, I'll let you get out of here first. I appreciate it, man, and have fun today. Absolutely. One more thing. I know Exo has commented here, says hopefully Elijah's our lucky charm. Here's a stat too. In my 2 years of covering this team, every game that I have been to in person to cover, they have won. The one game I was not able to attend this year was the UConn game because I was taking my lovely girlfriend Mira to meet my mother in Tennessee. And it was pre-planned. So it was one of those things I was just going to have to take the L and not be able to attend the game. But every game that I've gone to and covered in person, they have won, which might have fueled my take a little bit in my prediction. But I have not seen this team lose since I have taken this game. So we can pin the loss in February on me. And if they win today, I'll gladly accept the ring. How about that? I'll gladly take it.
I like it. Let's get Elijah Campbell a championship ring if South Carolina wins today. Let's see it. Elijah, man, thanks as always for your great coverage and appreciate you hopping on, spending some time with me.
Absolutely. As always, Jack, anytime, brother, anytime.
All right. Take it easy, my friend. That was Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game. Does an absolutely phenomenal job over there. I highly recommend giving him a follow on Twitter if that is where you get your coverage from. E_Campbell3. That's E_CAMPBELL3. So looking forward to seeing what happens on the hardwood today, but also we've got a lot of other things going on in Gamecock athletics today. Not just the national championship is the most important thing going on today in the world of South Carolina athletics. We also have some big games going on the Diamonds. And before we get into talking about all that, real quick, got to talk to you guys about our main show sponsor, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you're in the market to buy a home, maybe you are ready to take that big step and buy a home. Or maybe you need help with your mortgage and you have no idea where to begin. I got good news for you. Clint Hammond can help you out. He'll take you through the process step by step, and he will get you on the right path towards buying your dream home. And, he's been in the mortgage industry for a very long time now. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan. He's also a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central. So you're in the right hands with a guy like Clint. So if you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to clinthammond.com for more info. And again, if you're watching live on stream, this information will be above me here on screen all show long and on all of our GC Live programs. So, as I alluded to, we have a big afternoon of women's basketball going on. And then we got baseball and softball in rubber matches this weekend, or today, I should say, this afternoon. We'll start with softball because that seems to be what a lot of people want to talk about. EXO definitely wants to talk some softball, and they say that they were on the edge of their seat on Friday and Saturday. And I mean, I can imagine a pair of one-run games. And if you like pitching duels, if you like little offense, that's what these first two games were. On Friday, South Carolina squeaked out a 1-0 walk-off win. Get this. When I saw this, I was like, that's insane. They won this game on a RBI walk with the bases loaded. So in that 8th inning, South Carolina walked 3 times to load the bases. And then they got the 4th walk on a pitch that maybe was a little bit, I don't know. It looked a little bit in the zone, but we'll see. And they brought the winning run home on a walk. 10 walks in that game, if I'm not mistaken. And Ole Miss just came up short. But they got the series evened on Saturday in another one-run game. This time, they took a 1-0 lead. South Carolina fought back to make it a tie game, 1-1. But then Ole Miss got the go-ahead run, and that was the difference in this game. And you look at South Carolina here, they only had 7 hits in this game, 1 RBI, struck out 4 times, left 9 runners on base. And I think that's the overall grand picture of today. Because if you're going to win the series this afternoon, you can win another tight game for sure. We've already seen it. But you need the clutch hit. And I feel like that's something we just have not seen yet this weekend from South Carolina. Yes, of course, they managed to tie the game yesterday, but they didn't get the go-ahead hit yesterday. And they only won the game on Friday because Ole Miss walked 10 batters. And that's good pitch selection, good eye at the plate by South Carolina, no doubt. So credit due there. But at some point, you need someone to come through with the big base knock. I mean, who is it going to be? Is it going to be, Carly Shelton? She had 2 hits yesterday. Is it going to be Ariana Rhodey? She went hitless yesterday, but we know how good she's been for South Carolina this year. You could go up and down this lineup. Someone needs to be able to come through with a big hit. And this would be this is a huge game for South Carolina today. Like they've had a great year, no doubt about it. They're right now in firm position, I would say, to host a regional in the NCAA tournament. And we'll see where that goes after this weekend. But they're a top 10 team right now. They have a chance to potentially host, and a win today, a series win over a ranked team like Ole Miss would be very big. And so you hope they're able to edge it out today. There's still a lot of softball left to go in this season, about another month here. But a series win today would do a lot. And even if you lose the series today, it's not the end of the world. Like it's never ideal to lose a series, especially at home. But South Carolina has been resilient all year long. They won a huge series against LSU last weekend out in Baton Rouge. They've already got series victories over Georgia as well, and Texas Tech in between after losing that heartbreaking series or getting swept by Oklahoma, I should say, in all 3 games being 1-run losses. But the Gamecocks have been great this year. They've been resilient, and there's a lot of reason to believe that they can go out here and win the series today. And we will have coverage on GamecockCentral.com today. We will have Peyton Butt, one of our interns. She will be there covering the game. She's done a great job for us since she started. I mean, it's been a while since she joined us now. So looking forward to seeing what she does today. So go to GamecockCentral.com to follow along with her coverage. And if you're not already, good time to mention, if you're not already a subscriber, perfect time to join our website, become a member. You get the exclusive access to the Insiders Forum, the exclusive access to all the premium stories that we have on our site. It's not just football recruiting and the inside scoop with that. You also get great coverage with the women's basketball program. We've beefed up our softball coverage this year. As I'll mention here in a little bit, you could follow along with my baseball coverage today. There's so much going on right now. In the men's basketball transfer portal too. So much going on. I would hate for anyone to miss out. So that's why I'm mentioning it. It's a perfect time to join. I say that a lot, but I really mean it with today. Like, perfect time to join, especially if women's basketball can get the job done today. And Friday, everyone won. Baseball won, softball won, women's basketball won. Women's basketball didn't play yesterday, so I'm led to believe that's why softball and baseball lost their games yesterday. But today's a new day, chance to have a really perfect day in Gamecock athletics, and we'll see if it can happen. So again, come join us on GamecockCentral.com. And also, if you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel here if you're listening on YouTube. You can just like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up button wherever you're listening. But if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Helps out a lot. Let's dive into baseball because that's why I am here in Starkville, Mississippi. A very, very big series finale between the Gamecocks and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. We'll break down this series from how it's gone so far. But we got a comment here from Adam. It's a great point that I think needs to be addressed right out of the gate. If baseball does not win today, they can kiss the postseason goodbye. The pitching has been a big disappointment. Was this expected? Our pitching struggles some. Guys haven't stepped up. So I'll break that down we'll break it down a little bit scientifically here. Number one, the first point, if they don't win today, meaning they'd lose the series to Mississippi State, and they would be 2-10 in SEC play. Yes, I think you can kiss the postseason goodbye because newsflash, next week you go to Texas A&M. That's a team that Friday night they had just gotten run ruled and no hit by number one Tennessee. It looked like they were on their way to getting swept. Give them a lot of credit, though. Give Michael Early and that squad out there in College Station a lot of credit. For the first time all year, they looked like the national championship contender a lot of us expected them to be. The Aggies did the impossible and swept the Vols at Lindsey Nelson yesterday in a doubleheader. So they took the series and they dominated that game too. So it is going to be a much tougher weekend for the Gamecocks next week, regardless of what happens today, because A&M was 1-8 coming into this weekend in SEC play, just like South Carolina, and they looked on the verge of just being done. But I think they're back to life now. And so the importance of winning today goes a long way. You still have so much ground to make up from the poor start you've gotten off to. But winning a series today is of the utmost importance. You're not going to be making the postseason if you lose this series today. Unless you just go on an insane run like you need to make the postseason. I just don't see it happening. 2-10 in league play would be very, very hard to come back from. 3-9 is not good by any means, but it's much more reassuring that, like, hey, South Carolina beat Mississippi State in a weekend series. They go to Aggieland next week. They find a way to take 2 out of 3 there. If they even drop the series, it's not ideal. But look, the point is you need to win the series today. Because the loser of this series, I fear, is just basically, I think they're done in terms of postseason hopes. So we'll see. Pitching has definitely struggled. Friday it was great. Saturday it stunk, quite frankly. That's just literally what it was. I'll disagree with the point that guys haven't stepped up. We've seen, Nathan Hall, Ethan Petrie have been the main source of offense this year for South Carolina. But give a lot of credit where it's due. A lot of guys have hit really well this weekend, and it hasn't been Petrie or Hall, honestly, really much at all. You go back to Friday, Bo Hollins had a 4-hit game. He was the main reason why South Carolina won that game with 4 RBIs in that game. Then you go back to yesterday. I know they didn't win yesterday, but Henry Kazmar hit 2 homers and had 3 RBIs in the loss yesterday. He was the main source of offense. So others have stepped up, but from a pitching standpoint, somebody needs to step up. And that's what we need to see today. It's just you really have to have a better pitching performance today. And we'll dive into Sunday here in a second. Got a few comments here to get into. Michael Lynn says, we're over halfway through the season, and we still don't even know what our lineup and pitchers are. Yes, I agree. The lineup continues to change every single game. That's not a problem necessarily. Hall and Petrie are going to be, we thought they were going to be in the middle of the order, but then Paul Maneri moves Nathan Hall back up to the leadoff spot yesterday. And you got Blake Jackson hitting second. You got so much shuffling in this lineup to where it's at what point do you kind of just have to figure out what you are and what you have with this lineup? You need guys to get on base. But aren't you trying to set that up for Hall and Petrie to drive those runs in, like Paul was saying the other day? So I don't know what to expect with the lineup today, and I'm sure that'll drop here in a few minutes. So if it drops, just let me know. We can definitely talk about that. I'll see once I get the Twitter notification here relatively soon. But there needs to be more consistency with this lineup. I think you got to find your consistency there, and you have guys that are hitting. That's not the issue. Again, yesterday not getting a hit after the 5th inning is a problem. That's a problem. No hits over the final 4 2/3 innings of this game against Mississippi State's relief pitching. That's really, really not going to cut it. But more than anything today, you're not going to win a game when you give up 5 home runs and 11 runs like you did on Saturday. It's plain and simple. Brandon Stone is getting the start on the mound today for South Carolina. I figured it would either be him or Matthew Becker. And then when I was told last night that it would be Stone, I'm a little surprised because, number one, it was just last week that Maneri said that Stone's better out of the bullpen. And then he obviously went out on Saturday last week and gave up 2 home runs against Tennessee. And so he's coming off a bad outing. But I do think him pitching to contact plays well. But it's not going to matter if it's a lot of fly balls because we saw the way the ball was carrying yesterday. And granted, I'm still looking outside. The weather is not great today. It's cloudy outside. It's been raining pretty much all morning. It's not raining right now. Hasn't been for a little bit. But the weather has not been great today. And so I wonder how that kind of plays into everything. It's not going to be a super hot day. It's going to be like the upper 60s, maybe low 70s today. I think it really depends on the wind because the wind was blowing last night. With the tornado updates and all that nonsense going on, ruining watching the Final Four for sure. If you guys saw that on my Twitter or on the Insiders Forum, ranting about that, that's a whole nother topic for another day. If the wind is blowing out today, I just wonder how much that kind of affects things. And again, it's a lame excuse, I think, to some extent because you got to be able to pitch well. But a fly ball that looks like maybe it's a routine out can carry out if the wind is really gusting and blowing a little bit. So we'll see. I would fully expect – I don't know what the pitching game plan is necessarily going to be today. It wouldn't shock me if Stone maybe goes 2 times through the order. You get him hopefully through 5 innings, and then you turn the game over to another guy who wasn't pitched this weekend. I thought maybe would start today is Matthew Becker. You need more out of him, and I think him coming out of relief today can honestly work. But it's got to work to where Stone gives you good innings and you're not trailing like you were yesterday. Like Jarvis Evans did not provide a good outing yesterday, plain and simple. Giving up 6 runs in 2 2/3 innings. You expect more out of him. It's not always going to be perfect, but you're at a 6-1 hole early on in this game. That's tough to come back from. And it didn't help that the bullpen gave up a bunch of runs after that. But today, you need a good outing from Stone. You need to avoid damage as much as possible. You need to take an early lead in this game. That's what kind of helped on Friday was that you set the tone right away. You scored in the top of the first, and then you fought back to tie the game at 3, and then you got the runs that you did to take the lead for good on a pair of errors. So you need a little bit of help probably from Mississippi State making mistakes, but you also need guys to step up. Again, as Adam pointed out earlier in the comment, guys need to step up, and pitching is no exception to that. You want to win today, get 4 or 5 good innings out of Stone, then turn the game over to Becker, get a few more good innings out of him. Maybe, honestly, you really do hope maybe those 2 guys can just be the only pitchers to throw today. And ideally, in a perfect world, you get a few good innings out of each of them. And then if need be, if one of them cannot finish the game, you have Brendan Sweeney come in and shut things down in the final inning. I knew he threw 3 innings on Friday, and that will definitely help Mississippi State in terms of already seeing him. But if the situation calls for it, where it's a save situation, you need 3 outs to win this game, pick up a series win, rest assured, I believe Brendan Sweeney will pitch today. I just you have to, right? If the situation calls for it, have to throw him out there. So, yes, there's a lot to break down with this game. And I know people are frustrated with seeing how this team has performed so far. But again, it's just they played well Friday. Yesterday, they didn't play awful. It's just the pitching was not good enough. You got enough hits early on to stay in this game. But once you kind of fell behind by a few runs because your pitching just continued to – it was like anytime South Carolina got a run, the pitching would give it right back. And that's the main issue, I think, with how yesterday's game went. So we'll see. You need more out of your pitching staff today, as I keep saying here. But you also need more hitting. Like, it's just a lot. You need it all to kind of come together the way it did on Friday. Everything really went perfect in that game in a 7-3 win. You fought back to tie the game. You got some help from some fortunate breaks that went your way to take the lead. Then you got some key insurance runs from Bo Holland hitting a 0-2 pitch into center field for a 2-run single to give you a 7-3 lead. And you got a great effort from your bullpen. Another guy I would totally expect to throw today is Caleb Jones, who, if you remember, going back to Friday, came into that really tight jam in the 6th inning where it's bases loaded, 1 out. Mississippi State looks to be on the verge of taking a potential, tying the game. I know South Carolina is up. I think they were up 5-3 at that point. It was at a juncture in the game where it's like, this could really fall apart here. But give credit to Jones. He got the next 2 batters out, escaped trouble, and that was the momentum shift in the game. And he only threw 11 pitches. So I definitely expect him to be able to go back out there today. And a lot of other guys will be able to throw. Again, we have a comment here about Tuesday. A lot of those arms like Tyler Pitzer, Jackson Susie, Ryder Greeno, a lot of arms will be able to throw today. No doubt about it. But situationally speaking, the only ones I would say that really should be throwing today if you're trying to win this game are Stone, Becker, Caleb Jones, Brendan Sweeney. I would throw Tyler Pitzer in that mix too. If the game gets out of hand, that's when you could start throwing the younger arms in there, getting them a little bit more work. But you don't want the game to get out of hand like it did yesterday, where you're kind of throwing guys like Cooper Parks. And Parker Marlott is one of your better high-leverage relievers, but he gave up a run yesterday. You want more. You want to be able to use your top guys today. And you used Sweeney for 3 innings the other day, so maybe he doesn't pitch today. I think he should if the situation calls for it. But, again, you need a good outing from Stone. That is the most important thing today. Get a good outing from Stone, and hopefully you have the lead, and then you can kind of go from there and piece it together to get a series win. It would be massive to come out of here with a series of victory. I just think I just don't know what. I mean, we know what's going to happen if they lose the series. I just don't think they're going to the postseason if that's the case. That's such an uphill battle to fight back from, as if you're not already fighting one. I mean, coming into this series, I wrote a story about it the other day. Ideally, you need to get to 13 wins in conference play to make the tournament. No team in the SEC has ever been left out when they've won 13 conference games and they have an RPI that is top 30. South Carolina's RPI coming into this weekend was 36th. Now, we'll see how that changes after the weekend, but they have 2 wins right now in conference play. You have 11 more to go to be able to get to where you want to go with that 13 wins, and you can probably win 12, maybe be okay, win a game or 2 in the SEC tournament. But, like, you lose a series this weekend, it's still possible mathematically, hypothetically, to get to where you want to go, but a series victory today would really go a long way in keeping you in the hunt, I would say. Like, there's still a lot of work, a lot of groundwork to go, but the difference between losing and winning today, to me, it feels like a postseason game today. Feels like an elimination game in a lot of ways. So, going to be a huge game out here in Starkville today. First pitch will be at 2 p.m. on SEC Network Plus, 1 p.m. Central Time for me, and if any folks are out here going to the game or watching on other parts of the country, 1 p.m. Central Time, but 2 p.m. Eastern for my folks that are watching back in Columbia on SEC Network Plus. Brandon Stone gets the start for the Gamecocks today, and as I'm looking at my phone, have not seen a lineup card come out yet, but I'm sure we will get that here relatively soon. You can follow along on GamecockCentral.com for all live coverage and updates throughout the afternoon. I'll have game stories, transcripts from what Maneri said, everything in between. And you can follow me along on Twitter as well. Jack T. Veltri, my handle right below me here. Jack T. Veltri on Twitter. You can also follow me along on there for all up-to-date coverage as I'm out here in Starkville for the weekend. And then heading back, presumably right after this game, that is my plan. Heading back tonight to Columbia. Going to be a late night, long day ahead of me, but appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, it's going to do it for us today on Sunday Reset. A big day ahead in Gamecock athletics at the national championship game between South Carolina and UConn today, 3 p.m. ABC. Softball's going on today at 3 p.m. also. And then you have baseball going on at 2 p.m. this afternoon on SEC Network Plus. A massive day in Gamecock athletics. I'm sure you guys will all be tuned in from start to finish to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing how everything unfolds today, as I know everyone here is hoping for 3 victories for South Carolina today. So once again, appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we'll be back next week. We'll be talking about a series between South Carolina and Texas A&M out in College Station. Big weekend coming up next week. But first, huge day today in Gamecock athletics. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and I will see you guys again soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.